2 years ago, I made 2 Iceberg videos about Roblox horror games, a genre that's always fascinated me. How can this goofy little Lego game be used to Since Roblox's inception, the idea of Roblox horror games has changed quite a bit. Even since the last Iceberg, the genre had changed a lot. Today, we're diving back into the deepest depths of the Roblox horror game rabbit hole, with an Iceberg including 126 entries. Before we get to tier 1 though, there's 3 things that I have to get out of the way. Some games featured in the Iceberg stray out of the horror genre, and more into the categories of surreal or slightly spooky showcases and myth games, but they'll all be included under one umbrella category of Roblox horror games. I don't guarantee the quality of these games, nor guarantee that they're scary at all, or fun. This video is only ranked from most popular to least known about. And finally, it's not required to watch the first 2 Icebergs, but they both include a lot of notable horror games that are missing here, and some sections may provide further context to what I'm talking about in this video. That being said, let's jump right into I'll try to keep tier 1 as short as possible because most people have already heard about everything here, but it's all worth mentioning to some degree. In Residence Massacre by Mr. Gamer 67, you and up to 3 extra players try to survive the night while defending yourselves from a creature made by a radioactive spill nearby. You have to find a way to balance out checking cameras, scaring monsters with lights, and the fuel levels for the outside generator. Residence Massacre was one of the fastest growing Roblox horror games of 2023, garnering over 100 million visits in less than 10 months. Weird Strict Dad is another Roblox horror game that had an extremely quick rise to prominence with a very similar concept to Residence Massacre. This time your dad is possessed. After its explosion in popularity, tons of ripoffs started popping up such as Weird Strict Scientist, Weird Strict Boss, and Weird Sauce Grandma. Jim's Computer is an old Roblox-styled horror game created by Rchive in 2022. You play as Jim gets a computer, and he becomes increasingly paranoid as he sees more and more reports of disappearances and military intervention in Robloxia, as well as a variety of strange occurrences. At the end, Jim completely boards his house up, buys a censored item that is later revealed to be a gun, and then he gets attacked by a Doors entity.
I don't want to play this game anymore. Bruh. I don't even understand what happened. I think a Doors entity might have attacked us.
I mentioned these 3 horror games in this order because these all fall under the trend of Roblox horror games using a style based on early Roblox, particularly the era of circle studs. This is fairly common in myth games that have some sort of surrealist quality to them. It's been around for a long time, but recently it's become quite overdone. Rainbow Friends is a hugely popular chapter-based Roblox horror game with over 3 billion visits that's been in development since 2021. The main story for the first chapter is that a group of players were meant to go on a field trip, but because of the sign being flipped by this evil dude, they go to an abandoned facility for 5 nights instead and have to complete tasks while running from these colorful friends, I guess. One of the 2 main developers, Roy Stanford, also created a well-known Roblox horror game called Spider, where one of the players in a server is selected to be a giant killer spider, and the rest have to survive while looking for keys used to escape the map. This game also has over 2 billion visits. The Butchery, created by Chubby Baby 7 in 2022, is a puzzle horror game that was influenced by Resident Evil 7. The Butchery follows the events of the players being kidnapped by 2 psycho brothers that live on a farm, and as a result, we now have a pig with human arms connected to it trying to attack us. Last April, a second part to this game was released, further expanding the plot and the gameplay, and ever since, this game has started to grow pretty rapidly, and has over 19 million visits as of writing, is what I'd say if it didn't increase to 21 million as I was recording this. Bitware Games' Escape the Darkness was a multiplayer survival horror game based on Dead by Daylight. The game was massively popular while it was still open, but it was closed in 2023 with the developers leaving this note behind. The Horror Mansion refers to 2 different games by Brisky T, created in 2016 and 2019 respectively. In a similar format to games like Survive the Disasters, both games have players surviving random characters in mansion settings. These include characters such as Jeff the Killer, Ellis from Left 4 Dead, and the 21 Kid. The 2 games have a combined 77 million visits. Cheese Escape is a game where you run from a killer rat inside of a maze made out of cheese. In the first chapter, you have to collect 9 cheeses to escape. This game has over 870 million visits. K Harbor KYT's Short Creepy Stories, created in 2021, is a Roblox horror game with a variety of mini horror games inside of it. These include chapters like Dollhouse, where you rob the house of a man who turned the dead body of his murdered wife into a hostile mannequin, Deadly Content, where a group of people go to an abandoned haunted hospital to film content, and many more. Chain is a multi-chapter survival horror game created by Suppression Studios in 2022 with over 15 million visits. Chain's story mode starts with you waking up in a home in the forest right after a guy with a chainsaw brutally murders 2 people in front of you. Your main goal is to repair generators in the nearby military base and find help, all while running from the chainsaw guy from earlier. Textix Slendytubbies Versus is a multiplayer remake of ZeoWorks' original Slendytubbies game from 2012. In their original Slendytubbies, which was pretty popular when it came out, you collect bowls of custard in a dark forest while running from Teletubbies. In Slendytubbies Versus, you could choose to either be a player collecting custard or one of many types of Teletubby-based monsters meant to kill the players. In 2023, a huge trend of experience horror games arose. Usually, these follow the formula of an average activity going wrong. There are tons of these created by groups like RCM Games, NRFL Studios, Shomori Studios, Extreme Funds, and many more. It's kind of similar to the weird zesty uncle type trend, where one group made a game with that formula and a bunch of other developers started taking notes. Similarly, in late 2023 and early 2024, there was a trend of horror games with the midnight blank title format, also with the similar formula of a casual job or activity going wrong. I'm not sure which group started it, it was likely either Guerrilla Games or Midnight Experiences. It actually got to the point where the Guerrilla Games developer stated in his group that their last game was scrapped because of the overpopulation of this kind of horror game on Roblox. When Bredian, another YouTuber who talks about Roblox horror games, made a video about the midnight and experience trends, calling it the death of creativity in Roblox horror games, a developer known for some of these types of games came forward and said they were literally made to be slop. The comment has since been deleted, and this mindset may not apply to all developers who participate in the trend or the people who created it, but it's definitely something to think about. Insani V3 by Stock Alec is a Roblox horror game that was published in 2019 set in an asylum. Players must wait long periods of time for events to occur, notably the door blowing up and players being able to escape. I didn't have the patience to record it because I did that about 4 years ago and it took about 3 hours. The game has over 36 million visits and still receives active players to this day. Boulderum's The Intruder is a survival horror Roblox game that's been in the works since 2021. The game starts with you getting a phone call from the police department telling you that there are intruders in your area and that the phone service will be cut temporarily. Your main goal is to survive intruders trying to enter your home until you regain phone service. This is one of the fastest growing Roblox horror games I've seen in a while. From March to June of last year alone, it garnered over 85 million visits, and in just the last year alone, it's garnered over 220 million. Forgotten Memories is a Five Nights at Freddy's fan game created by Cubix Games in 2022 with over 127 million visits. That's really about it. Judy refers to a pretty well-known multi-chapter story-based Roblox horror game from 2021 about a Hollywood star of the same name that's gone missing. A lot of the gameplay is exploration-based, exploring new settings related to Judy's case and learning more about the story. The developers Phantom Archive also created Pinstripe Murders, another multiplayer chapter-based horror game, this time about surviving clown serial killers in a hotel. Nightlight is a multiplayer horror game about being locked in a stranger's home and having to collect 8 notes that spell out selfish, with a period. While searching, this candle will keep the monster away from you. Pretty simple concept, and it's managed to amass a large player base in just 8 months. Faithless is a multiplayer story-based Roblox horror game that was created by Society of Dark Mysteries, inspired by the game Faith. The game centers around you and a priest named Father Herrera being sent to perform an exorcism on a possessed character named Billy. And the game was pretty popular in late 2023 and early 2024, as it has over 35 million visits as of me recording this. Peta Peta, or Pita Pita, or Peta Peta, I don't know. It's a Japanese horror game about exploring an abandoned hotel while the namesake monster tracks you down. The name itself is an onomatopoeia for the sound of barefoot footsteps, which, yeah. This game blew up in late 2023 and has over 60 million visits as of me writing this. A stereotypical obby is the first of 3 Roblox horror games made by Ignited Softworks that are all a part of the same universe. It poses as a stereotypical difficulty chart obby, but it changes as time goes on. Their second game, County Archives, follows the events of July 12th, 2003. We play as a kid left home alone by his parents after he got an Axiom VR headset for his birthday. After some time passes, an unnaturally high amount of cops drive by, and a series of EAS alerts play on the TV telling us to shelter in place because of nearby fugitives. After hearing gunshots outside, another EAS alert tells us that Repla County does not exist, and any mentions of it beforehand were from signal hijackers caused by an Axiom headset user, and that everyone with Axiom headsets needs to turn themselves in immediately. Someone then breaks into our home and we're shot. This is the main ending. Half a year later, Repla County Archives 2 was released. The game follows the events of July 12th, 2003, the same day, from a cop's perspective. First, we pull over someone for speeding, then he tells us about something he saw lurking in the woods, possibly possibly a man in a deer suit, and possibly Jenkins, the talk of the town. Later, we pull over a Wyatt Jenkins, who doesn't talk very much and his responses are cold. We're told by a dispatch officer that he has previous arrests for disturbing the peace, and that we should be wary. 3 hours later, after returning to the police station, we're sent to perform a welfare check on the Jenkins residence. There's a burning car in front and the door is locked. After kicking down the door, we can see that there's writing all over the walls. I can feel them watching, constant surveillance, and stuff like that. Upon opening the bathroom, we see Wyatt Jenkins' dead body, along with writing on the wall, "They're here." The same EAS alert we saw in the first game about Replik County not being a real county plays on the TV after this. Attempting to ask a dispatch officer what the alert was about gives us no response. Shots are fired into the house, and hiding doesn't work. After we regain connection, we have two options: join Jenkins or go outside and surrender. Overall, a very interesting series. Octic's Traversal is a survival horror game released in the summer of 2022. You may recognize the developer's name for creating other games that I've talked about on this channel, such as Confinement or Containment. Traversal starts with you waking up in an abandoned facility of some sort filled with a bunch of other armed hostile people. Your goal is to survive. The name of the game is Stealth for this, as without it you will usually just get immediately smoked. According to Octic's bio, more levels are in the works, and I'm excited to see where this project goes because yeah, it's pretty good. Anxiety refers to a horror game created in 2016 by Zoidberg656, which serves as a sort of panic attack simulator made to spread awareness of the effects that disorders like anxiety can have on someone. This game was nominated for Best Single Player Game at the 6th Annual Bloxy Awards event and has garnered over 5 million visits since. Scary Maze is the earlier project of Michael Vanderfin, who went on to make the horror game Roses. The game itself is exactly what it sounds like. It's a maze of doors with scares in it. The game was pretty popular around 2014 and 2015 as it was pretty impressive for the time, graphically at least. This is actually an improved version of a much earlier project of his, from 2010 or 2011. That version was made private and this took its place in 2014. Rust_010 is a former Myth turned Roblox horror game developer and YouTuber. Some of his Myth games were commonly seen on Flamingo's channel around 2017 to 2019, notably Rust and Smile, two different Myth games that have almost 1.7 million visits combined. Besides those two, he has tons of other Myth games from the late 2010s, ranging from 1,000 to 500,000 visits. Hide and Seek with Billy is a Roblox horror game created by the YouTuber Chase Rooney in 2023. You have a short amount of time to hide in a variety of places in a small apartment, though the hiding place cannot be the same as one with a designated icon drawn on the wall. In just a year, it's amassed over 2 million visitors. Kango Development's Five Nights at Freddy's 2 Reimagined is a FNAF fan game made to give a new twist on the original, with improved gameplay elements like the fuse box feature to repair broken cameras, these new animations, and more. Apparently this will be the developer's last big Roblox project before they move into game development using different engines, so good for them. Similarly, Submarine Simulator is a horror game that was heavily influenced by the FNAF franchise. At first glance, the game tries to look like a game that's as far from horror as possible, but the game becomes increasingly sinister as you go. Your job is to operate a submarine and complete tasks in the depths of the Mariana Trench, while evil demon dudes try to kill you. After each of the 7 nights, a minigame will start, and over time, these minigames turn into cutscenes about the player's dying daughter. This game is pretty sick and I would recommend checking it out. My Eyes Deceived is a Roblox port of an indie horror game originally created by Endev Group with an incredibly dark story. The story revolves around a young girl who's kept in her father's basement under the false belief that the outside world was being infected with a deadly disease. Throughout the game, we take unknown pills, which are later discovered to be sedatives, and the ending line implies that her father was sexually assaulting her in her sleep. The port made by Cheeseplox was eventually made private at the request of the developer. Also made by Cheeseplox is All Over Me, a collection of 5 scrapped Roblox horror games that were canned due to burnout. They're all presented in the form of drug-induced daydreams given to the victim of a violent car accident in an equally violent snowstorm. All of them have very depressing tones, and a lot of them have to deal with mental illness. The first one is about the dull life that drove someone to suicide. Buried Above Text Messages is about trying to guide a stranger during a mental crisis through text. Katie casts you as a kidnapper hiding out in a motel. Somewhat Disturbing Tribute is something I couldn't really decipher because it's one of the most overstimulating Roblox games I've ever played, and Remarks consists of a series of dark rooms and bridges that you walk along as strings of text appear on screen, and a recording of a lady singing plays in the background, all accompanied with pixel art of a person hanging that stares at you as you go. I would highly recommend checking out this collection for yourself, but again, these games deal with dark topics that may not be suitable for some. Anyways, to lighten up the mood, much like the game's short creepy stories that I talked about earlier, Horror Stories 2 is a Roblox game with a collection of much smaller horror games, usually based on creepypastas. This game was pretty popular from 2013 to 2016, garnering over 1 million visits, but it was closed in late 2016 and the game is now considered a piece of lost media. Since then, a different game called Horror Stories 2 with over 1.4 million visits was created by developer 437M with a very similar premise. And for the final entry of Tier 2, we have The Severance by Dread Development. The Severance is a single-player Roblox horror game about a person's daily routine which is broken more and more by hallucinations caused by the death of a friend. This game has multiple endings, one of them suggesting that the man we're playing as kidnapped said friend. In previous videos of mine, I talked about the lost, scrapped sequel to the iconic Bloody Mary game from 2011, named Bloody Mary 2 Gone. It started development in 2012, went through a 3-year development hell, but was ultimately scrapped. In early 2012, Haunted USA, the developer, set up a riddle for players to solve to find an early version of the game, but multiple accounts that were a part of the riddle were banned. In January of this year, the owner of a Roblox archival team named Rchive stumbled upon early copies of Bloody Mary 2 that were meant to be the final piece of the riddle. As a result, we have 3 early versions of the game from February 2012. Sadly, Haunted USA never posted the later version of the game from July 2012, so all we have from that version is a video of people exploiting to see unreleased content from the game. Pressure is a work-in-progress Doors fan game created by Urban Shades set in an underwater research facility. Since its creation, the game has been going in and out of closed testing, and as of right now, release is slated for sometime in July 2024. A nostalgic hangout game and Crossroads Hangout game are 2 bait-and-switch Roblox horror games created by One Who Finds, based on old-school Roblox games that seem nice at first but have dark twists to them. There's lore about some organization called the Roblox In-Between Society that manages a multiverse that connects all these games together, and there's also connections to old myths like Banland and Noli, which I thought would be interesting to mention here. Both games have around 350k visits each, and a third one is supposedly in development. You vs. Mario is a survival horror game created by developer Z Kevin in 2021, where players survive a player-controlled Mario head tasked with killing every player before rounds end, and because of its copyrighted assets, the game was taken down months after it was released. Kagutaba is a short horror game with multiple endings, played through the perspective of a recording of the final moments of a priest who went missing in 2001 after performing some sort of ritual. This game has an interesting art style and was pretty nice despite its short playtime. Survive Your Horrors is an early Roblox horror game by Delicious Baked Pie, a developer most commonly associated with the Roblox Orban community with nearly 5 million visits. In the game, you're given the choice to teleport to one of a variety of mini-maps based on a certain creepypasta and have to survive the character in question. Out of nowhere, this game recently had an upsurge in players despite not being updated in nearly a decade. In late 2013, the developer DataBrain published a multi-chapter horror game called Dread, where you play as a schizophrenic patient exploring large abandoned facilities and unraveling the stories of those who were here before us via notes left behind on the walls. Development was paused at some point and the game was left in a demo phase forever. Alex 8908's Eyes is a Roblox horror game based on the actual game Eyes, an indie horror game that was pretty popular in the early 2010s, where you have to escape a mansion while a monster chases you. I remember this game being pretty popular at one point, but as of right now, the game has over 6.2 million visits. I don't know how I didn't mention this in the first part of this series, but A Farmer and His Scarecrow is a game by Haunted USA, the developer most known for his Bloody Mary game from late 2011. A Farmer and His Scarecrow is a game where players investigate the events covered in a journal left behind by the daughter of a poor family living on a farm in the early 20th century. Eventually, we learn that the mother was killed by the father. The game was in development from early 2012 to mid 2014, and I covered the early scrapped versions in the first video. This game, which translates from Polish as Hidden, is a myth game from 2016 that has connections to Luhi's strange My Dollhouse game that I talked about in the first episode. The game mostly consists of a dark forest with a few structures and secrets within it. Monstorm is a multiplayer Roblox horror game with sci-fi themes created in 2015. In the game, one randomly selected player becomes one of many different types of monsters with their own unique abilities, and the rest of the server has to kill the monster and survive to the end of the round. And it was heavily promoted through Roblox's official social media at one point. The game has over 3 million visits, though it doesn't seem to have an active player base anymore. Everything Goes Here 1989 is an analog horror-inspired Roblox game set in a tape and an associated log, with point-and-click gameplay that tells a story about the interrogation of a man who murdered his wife wife and children. And for the final entry of Tier 3, The Rule Enforcer's Mental Hospital is a horror game from late 2013 that had random boosts in popularity throughout 2016 to 2018. In the game, players attempt to survive exploring an abandoned mental hospital with monsters inside. At some point in 2019, the game was completely reset by moderators, likely for the large amounts of unrealistic blood. The game itself is now lost media. At the start of 2015, a YouTuber named Mrs. Kitty uploaded a Roblox creepypasta video about a strange account named Ubully, sending them cryptic messages about bullies trying to kill them, and the story goes that you have to join her game and like sell your soul or something. Because of the creepypasta, the Ubully account has a place with over 145,000 visits. It's not really a game, there's just a bunch of models spread across a grassy field with whatever this is. A Night at the Hotel is a series of Roblox horror games from 2013 about a long string of paranormal occurrences at a certain room in this hotel, which you get to see firsthand when it's the only room available for us. All three parts of the series combined have over 1 million visits, though the third one was never finished. In previous Iceberg videos, I talked about the Scare a Silly Game Creation Contest from 2014, which spawned a lot of horror games that were pretty good for the time. All of these have tens, even hundreds of thousands of visits, but there's still more winners from this contest that I have not yet mentioned. The Lua Users Missing, with over 90,000 visits, is a game about a really strange nightmare. Sadly, the game no longer works. Similarly, in September 2007, the Roblox admins hosted the Spooky Building Contest, an event that encouraged users to build some spooky places for a chance at winning the Eerie Pumpkinhead, which, yeah, I think that's worth it now. I talked about the Cursed House in previous videos, which was an entry to this contest, but the #1 most visited game overall ended up being Stealth Pilot's Humanoid Harvester Horror, where players are picked up and then harvested. More entries to this contest will be featured throughout the video. Unknown Demise is an obscure multiplayer Roblox horror game created in the early 2010s by a Mercer, where players become detectives looking for evidence pertaining to a murder scene. While at the site of the crime, a ghost haunts the players, though it can only be seen through the viewfinder on a battery-operated camera. The main goal is to collect evidence and make it out alive. As a result of not being updated in over a decade, this game is pretty dead now. Stop the Infection is a 2009 horror game by Dude One, the creator of Work at a Pizza Place. Humans work together to find and kill all infected players, and infected players try to wipe out all the humans before the end of the game. It's pretty interesting to see a game like this from Dude One of all people, but this game no longer works as of 2024. Whatever That Says by VenomShank40 is a Roblox puzzle horror game about finding keys related to a repair job on a construction site. After climbing the spire, you descend to enter a maze and gather all the keys without being caught by this guy. This game was created in early 2021 and has received almost 80,000 visits since. Default with certain letters replaced by numbers was an old myth that garnered popularity through the Roblox forums from 2013 to 2016. The account had a creepypasta game named Black, formerly Pokemon Black, to go along with it. Sad Satan is an infamous horror game outside of Roblox known for supposedly including disturbing and even illegal imagery that flashed on screen during gameplay. On Roblox, there are multiple recreations of the game minus the disturbing and illegal content. Attainment Failure refers to a 2019 game by Little Nathaniel, a pretty established Roblox myth. The game doesn't have much of a story at all. It's filled with strange structures and monsters, all within a barren and desolate landscape. The game is a smaller piece of a larger hub game called The Thing That Walks With Her, which contains all of the games connected to the myth. This game, which translates from Chinese to English as Girls Middle School, is a mysterious myth game that was created in 2016. The game consists of a grayscale building with sparse furniture. Though it was removed in 2018, early versions of the game contained flashing images and Morse code with cryptic messages. The 10th Spirit is a Mugen-inspired Roblox horror game created by Octic in 2021 that's no longer accessible. From the footage I've seen of it, it was almost like a puzzle game where you had to traverse a set of rocky aisles by moving unstable wood planks. Towards the middle of the game, players encounter the first monster, which was based on the Bureau seen in the 16th century book False Monarchy of Demons. Because Octic seems to be working on other games instead, I don't think this game will be accessible or updated again anytime soon. RedCarKyle123 is the developer of a large array of cryptic Roblox horror games, all made in the last 4 years. These games only have around 40,000 visits total, with most of them having a little over 1,000 visits on average. A lot of them are themed after old Roblox, and gameplay mostly consists of exploration and triggering events that change parts of the map. Some of my favorites include Game, set in an unfinished game about an average town, Field of Flowers, set in a large field of flowers, and Alone, a point-and-click game set inside of a house where you are definitely not alone. On top of these, Red Car Kyle has a series of atmospheric experiences, that's the term he uses, made using ordinary games that Red Car Kyle made years ago. For example, Old Friend Hangout, based on an old Hangout game, where the NPCs that have been stuck there for years finally come alive, realizing the creator had abandoned them. Reminiscent was also quite interesting, but the plot wasn't very clear. Upon joining, we're told through messages in a very retro fashion that we're too late and there's only one thing we can do: turn on all the screens in the map. In the back of the map, there's one huge screen showing the same image as the smaller screens, and quickly we've run out of time and we're caught by whatever this is. I'd recommend checking some of his games out, as I think they're rather interesting. Insanity refers to a multiplayer Roblox horror game created by One Billy Bob in 2014. It's a pretty generic game by today's standards. One player is chosen to be a killer while the rest of the players attempt to survive the rest of the round. Especially with the maps and music choices, it seems like this one was going for more of an eerie tone than a game like Murder Mystery. It doesn't get any players anymore, but it has over 110,000 visits as of 2024. Golden Dragon Man X's Scarecrow is a story-based Roblox horror game that was released right before Halloween 2014. It revolves around the McKay farmhouse, the gold in the mines under the farmhouse that our father really doesn't want us to have for ourselves, and this freaky ass scarecrow guy that likes to teleport. This is a pretty solid game for the time it was made, and I think it's a bit better than some of the other Golden Dragon Man X games that I've talked about in previous videos. For context for this next entry, Hospital Nightmare 3 is an iconic old Roblox horror game created in August 2011 by Adrian928. It was stolen hundreds of times and occasionally appeared on the front page for the next few years. The rest of this series, Hospital Nightmare 1, 2, 4, and 5, all failed to reach the same success that Hospital Nightmare 3 did. Hospital Nightmare 2, released in mid-2011, is essentially the same thing as Hospital Nightmare 3, but worse. It starts out the same way, but the map is entirely different. The Robloxian Sewer is an underground exploration game from 2010 with some of the goofiest scares I've ever seen. Underground 1 and 2 refers to a series of exploration-based horror games made by Takaisho, the developer of Pinewood Computer Core and Mega Miners in 2009. They're both set in a strange underground facility in Antarctica. We're tasked with figuring out the mysteries behind said tunnels and finding a way out. Both games have a very interesting feel to them and have just under 100k visits combined. Fear, spelled as an acronym, not in reference to 1Dev2's game or the actual game by that name, was a series of horror games created by Kumike from late 2008 to mid 2009 that saw moderate success at the time and launched a whole trend of exploration-based horror games afterward. Kumike's games usually had players walking around a giant map with hidden dead bodies and NPCs telling you some sort of story. Kumike's games range from having over 180,000 visits to just over 1,000. Kumike was banned in the early 2010s and his games haven't been updated since. Speaking of Fear, Fear Mission: The Ones Who Dared is a horror game, in very light air quotes, created by Zuka in 2008. It's a clone of Shedletsky's Haunted Mansion from 2006, modified to include new Easter eggs and dialogue. The dialogue doesn't work in modern Roblox, but this old recording of the game from 2008 shows them in action, so. Because this game has lore about a group of 13 men who died at the mansion, if 13 players are in a server, strange events occur for like 5 seconds. When Silence Stops Moving is a puzzle/exploration/survival horror game by 8DSK, a developer I've mentioned before because of games they've made like The Bell Maze, Manor.exe, Shadow Leak, and most infamously, Party.exe. I actually really like this game. It's quite long, but I definitely recommend checking it out, and it only has 18,000 visits. Finding Bigfoot is an old school horror/RPG type game, I guess, about finding Bigfoot in the mountains and talking to residents of different villages trying to figure out what's going on. Pretty interesting, but the execution is very janky, even for the time that it came out in the early 2010s. It's not helped by the fact that Roblox converted the format of all their terrain some years ago, making certain paths crucial to beating the game completely impossible to enter. Stop is a jump scare game from 2011 that was posted to the account Herobrine with an L. The game capitalizes on the original Herobrine creepypasta, which was starting to gain notoriety at the time. It's theorized that this account was originally owned by Maximum ADHD, formerly known as Clone Trooper 1019, because of the scripts in the game being watermarked with his old username. Row War Ghost Hunt is the name of a 2008 horror game by R92, a classic Roblox developer known for being a popular user in the early stages of Roblox. Set in a dark military base type setting, players use flashlights to kill ghosts. This game was relatively popular in late 2008, garnering over 43,000 plays by 2009, but fell into obscurity pretty quickly after it stopped receiving updates. R92 also made one of the highest scored entries to the 2007 Roblox Spooky Building Contest that I mentioned earlier, winning the Scariest Monster category for his game Quest number 5. To this day, the game still has less than 2,000 visits though. The next few entries on this iceberg all focus on obscure RSPC games, so I'll get through them rather quickly. PRG's Shadows of the Dark won the Best Halloween Capture the Flag category, and here's what it looked like. It has less than 1,000 visits as of 2024 on the original upload, and only 800 on the re-upload found on PRG's main account. Gamer3D's The Living Dead was a surprisingly well-made zombie survival game for 2007 standards, and as a result, it won the Most Clever Script and Best Use of Zombies categories. Still though, it has less than 3,000 visits. And finally, Polyhex's World's Dumbest Zombies won an honorable mention category for funniest kissing in under 200 bricks. What? This is also the earliest known Polyhex game that still exists, predating all of their other existing games by at least a few months, which is kind of interesting considering they went on to make a wide array of successful Roblox games. Abandoned: The Subway Dare is a deleted Roblox horror game made by the Coder Bunny in the summer of 2009 that had over 100,000 visits. Footage of the game from when it was still open shows that the plot revolved around a player being dared by classmates to explore an abandoned subway. In the late 2000s, the admin Clockwork owned a now defunct unofficial Roblox forum named Roblox HQ. Roblox HQ had a place review section, and this game was the highest rated as of 2010, boosting its popularity for a short time. In December 2010, there was a large wave of forum posts about a creepypasta made by the developer Big Rigs surrounding his game RSG Space Station. It was called the Black Room Creepypasta and theorized that there were hidden teleporters that led players to hidden black rooms, and that the game could hack your account and destroy your computer or something. The game in question is now private, but recordings of the game can be found on YouTube. This entry refers to two different early Roblox horror games about ghost hunting, created by Terror King in 2008 and Willy the Weirdo in 2010 respectively. One has you capturing evidence of ghosts on a haunted ship, and the other has you capturing photos of ghosts in a haunted prison exhibit. The second one's actually pretty sick for being over 14 years old. Both games have a bit over 200,000 visits each, but struggle to see players nowadays. Malchazar's Fear, Forest of Horror game from 2009 is another good example of the amateur fear games that were popular in the late 2000s. It's kind of funny to me nowadays that messing with the MS Paint spray tool back then could get you on the front page, but it did. The original play slot with this game in it has over 100,000 visits, but since it was moved to a new play slot, it's only gained 500 visits. Some random guy SRG's SCP Lockdown was a popular Roblox fan game back in 2012 of the original SCP Containment Breach game. Just from the short time I spent playing it, it looked pretty advanced for its time. In May 2013, however, it was replaced by a different game the developer was working on called Redacted. By the late 2010s, the game was broken by Roblox updates and was made uncopylocked as a result. This is a myth game from early 2017, and the title is Somalian for the phrase "they come to you." In the game, you navigate a series of strange areas strung together by teleporters. The game doesn't seem to have a lot of information surrounding it, but a prevailing theory suggests that this game is allegorical for something related to sins like greed, which is supported by the fact that the last area we enter in the game depicts hell. Before Zeekers made Lethal Company, they were a popular Roblox horror game developer, most known for the games A Lucid Dream, Lightbulb, and Silent Dark. Before they were even popular for Roblox horror games from 2014 onward, they had quite a few scrapped demos and early attempts that didn't go anywhere. The earliest known horror game from Zeekers is Dark Mansion, created in April 2012 with 400 visits. Players escape a dark mansion riddled with the best jump scares ever. The next one, Outbreak from August 2013, is entirely unfinished and has only 13 visits. All the game contains is a small chunk of a facility in the middle of some sort of emergency lockdown. To be honest, it looks alright for the time it was made, and I'm sure making these short demos helped Zeekers improve as a game developer. The Grudge by Cody Hayes is an obscure horror game that was on the front page for a short time in 2010. It's not very notable, but I'm including it as a good example of what most horror games looked like at the time. This is amazing. I talked about Databrain's Dread earlier, and later in the iceberg we have Only the Death of Us, Databrain's first attempt at a multiplayer Roblox horror game from early 2013. In Only the Death of Us, you're trapped in a military base and must find a way out. This game was closed at some point in the last 3 years and hasn't been playable since. Stolen Soul by Pocobob is a winner of the 2014 Scare Us Silly contest with only 8,000 visits. In Stolen Soul, you play as a private investigator tasked with freeing the souls of 8 people who went missing focusing at an abandoned mansion in the woods. Nowadays, however, the game is entirely broken, as you get stuck on the intro cutscene immediately. Similarly, Monster Manor, created by Friaza in 2010, is a Roblox game where you investigate a manor responsible for the deaths of hundreds of people. This game is kinda interesting because the developer went on to make other games with tens of millions of visits. Uncharted Desert is a pretty interesting horror game. It was created in August 2021 by High Penguin Flip and tasks you with locating the source of a signal found on a rudimentary GPS device in an expansive desert. The game has 3,000 visits and doesn't seem to have an ending yet, but considering it hasn't been updated in 2 years, I don't know if it'll ever be finished. Fear the Dead Sea by British Lieutenant 1 is another example of the fear horror game trend that was huge on Roblox at the end of the 2000s. Much like the rest of the fear games, this one was just a boat with a ton of dead bodies inside and outside of it. This one garnered over 161,000 visits before being closed about 8 years ago. As a result, all that seems to be left of the game is one recording of gameplay that was uploaded to YouTube over a decade ago. For context, Roblox spent most of 2010 and some parts of 2011 doing weekly events under a section of their website called contests, which were usually very broad building contests that not a lot of the community seemed to like. In a previous Iceberg video, I talked about the Roblox Most Haunted House building contest from 2010, and how almost every game made for the contest is now lost to time. One of the only available games from the contest seems to be PRG's winning entry, Scary House, based on Game Hero's Cursed House game from 2007 that I've mentioned before. Despite the rest of the contest entries either being deleted, replaced, or having less than 1,000 visits each, this one has over 73,000 visits. After the success of Survive the Disasters, Roblox developer Virus started to work on a Roblox recreation of the horror game Penumbra: Black Plague. It was developed from early 2012 to mid-2013, but was left unfinished and was eventually removed due to a DMCA policy around 2019. Earlier in the Iceberg, I talked about the Roblox Spooky Building Contest hosted in September of 2007, which encouraged players to make spooky showcases and early amateur attempts at horror games, in very light air quotes. Out of the top 30 RSBC entries that were mentioned on the blog post announcing the winners, 4 of them are no longer playable in any capacity. Test page for user ads is a myth account from 2019 connected to an obscure yet much larger myth named the Ultri. The account poses as some sort of admin testing page, but only exists to contain a mysterious game called You Shall Suffer. For simplicity, I'll just call this developer ZKB for short. ZKB is a mysterious Roblox developer with a series of myth games on his account, all created in 2018. His most popular is Why Are You Doing This To Me, a game which will crash your Roblox client and use insane amounts of your computer's memory when you're caught by a reflectant ball that chases you down. Ever since Mugen's rise in popularity starting in 2017, a ton of myth games have used glitches to crash your game upon death, only allowing you to close the game using Task Manager. The Truth Hurts was a scrapped horror game by Ravenshield. We don't know much about the game besides the fact that it was a work in progress as of 2009 and 2010, but was never finished. Escape is a kinda interesting game that was created by the user Jack Rackham in January 2007, literally months after Roblox officially released. This is considered by many to be the second potential horror game with very light air quotes of all time, following Forest of Desolation, created on Shedletsky's alt account in August 2006. In Escape, you traverse an abandoned hospital. Escape was closed in mid-2007, but the place file has been archived since. V, with like insane Zalgo text artifacts, is a myth game connected to the group Consinity. The prevailing theory is that this game tells the story of a man who killed someone and turned to religion afterward. Manager's Office is an old horror game by Cardinal, who you may know for creating Limbabia or Find Markiplier. You're stranded in a maze of rooms with who I assume to be our manager, and all we can do is run and hide behind movable boxes and shelves. There's multiple code doors that unlock further parts of the map. This game was made private rather recently, but because it's on copylocked, it can still be played by anyone via Roblox Studio. In 2018, a myth account named Boy I Sure Do Love Jesus uploaded a series of strange games with a disturbing story. The main game is a birthday party with hints around the map that insinuate that the main character was sexually assaulted by a pastor, who was a family friend of some sort. Hidden journal entries written in Wingding's font substantiate this further, explaining that the victim tried telling somebody but her mother said she was just being rude. The 2 games you're supposed to be teleported to no longer work because they were removed by moderators in the last few years. Scary Hospital Run is a lost Roblox horror game created by Ed1992 at the start of 2010 that reached the front page for some time before it was deleted. In just the first couple weeks of 2010, it gained over 22,000 visits, but because of how quickly it fell into obscurity, there isn't a single screenshot or a recording of the game in existence. This entry is meant to be a continuation of the Hospital Nightmare 2 story that I talked about earlier. Hospital Nightmare 1 has an especially interesting story because it's completely lost. It was made in April 2011, and all that exists of the game is a handful of low-quality recordings because he replaced it with Hospital Nightmare 2 around. Apparently, Adrian928 was so ashamed of it that when he released Hospital Nightmare 2, he told people not to ask about it. Orange Peels is the name of a scrapped horror game made in collaboration by Haunted USA, Rem25, One Roblox Gamer 1, and Daypale in late 2012. The game was never finished, and we have no idea what the plot could have been because the title is kind of, it doesn't really give us many hints. There are no screenshots or videos of the game as it only had 18 visits, and those visits were probably from the developers themselves. In a previous video, I mentioned Bobulator's early horror game Face Your Fears Haunted Hotel, which saw front page success in the late 2000s. After this, Bobulator made a slew of sequels, including The Cottage, Norbrick Hotel, Mansion in the Marsh, and Castle Faustus. Some of these were never finished, but are still playable on Roblox today. The Rapture was supposed to be the 4th installment in the Face Your Fears series, but was left unfinished and replaced by Mansion in the Marsh. Despite not being accessible on Bobulator's profile, the game is uncopylocked and can be played in Roblox Studio. A quick honorable mention for this Iceberg, My Beautiful Roblox World 00 is an unlisted creepypasta video uploaded by Vibing Leaf in December 2022. Vibing Leaf is most known for their modern retakes and reimaginings of older creepypastas, with My Beautiful Roblox World being an example that fits the topic of this video. I'm not sure if this video is a callback to any sort of creepypasta that I don't know about, and it was unlisted shortly after being uploaded as the creator said they weren't amused with the final product. J7968 is a developer known for a collection of single-player puzzle horror games, most notably Happy and Passage. These games usually are categorized as psychological horror and have some sort of old Roblox style to them. In previous videos, I talked about the works of an early Roblox horror game developer named Iceclipse, who had a variety of popular Roblox games in the late 2000s and early 2010s. Some were re-uploaded to alts, such as Sewage Monster from 2009, where one player in a server is chosen to be a sewage monster tasked with killing the rest of the players. Players can win rounds for points and use those points to buy upgrades. This one saw quite a bit of popularity in late 2010 and has over 70,000 visits but struggled to see players after 2011. The Goblin and Abominable Snowman are both survival horror games that Iceclipse uploaded to alt accounts in 2010, but struggled to see success. Both games remain under 1,000 visits to this day. The Farmhouse was one of his earlier attempts at a Roblox horror game being created in mid-2009. Similar to the Boogeyman game, in The Farmhouse, players survive being attacked by a variety of monsters at night on a farm, and gather points by killing monsters. This one was closed sometime within the last 10 years and hasn't been playable since, leaving only a few recordings and screenshots of the game left behind. Shortly after the spike in popularity that Kumike's Fear games saw in 2008, a user named Zoo12 started his own series of similar horror games, in very light air quotes, in 2009 under the name Sin. These usually follow the same formula as Kumike's earlier Fear games, explore a giant building with dead bodies in it, and maybe NPCs tell you what happened. They weren't as popular either. Visit counts for the Sin games range from about 14,000 visits to only 600. Kevin Mitnick was a mysterious alt account created by the now banned early Roblox developer Weirado, named after a famous hacker. This alt account was the subject of controversy on the now defunct Roblox forums for a short time in 2008. In June 2008, a freshly made account with this grayscale body color pattern made a string of now deleted and very cryptic posts. Because of his posts, people believed that favoriting his place and copying his avatar would give them the NetHack Man Pages hat released days prior. The only two people with the hat were the moderator Doc Strange and the mysterious Kevin Mitnick account. I don't blame them either. At the time, the Roblox admins hosted events with very similar concepts. Kevin Mitnick's place was a dark version of the Happy Home in Robloxia place, and it appeared in the favorites of famous Robloxians such as Mike, the creator of the most popular place of all time at that point in time. The next day, the admins banned the Kevin Mitnick account, and Weirdo came out and explained what he was going to do with the account. If this were to happen nowadays, it would likely fall into the same category as some myth accounts in this Iceberg, such as John Doe, which is why I thought mentioning it here would be pretty interesting. In 2010, a user named GG1221 made 4 4 failed myth accounts after the popularity of Noli, and promoted it via the Roblox forums and a series of YouTube videos that are still up today. All 4 accounts have their own games with less than 1,000 visits each. The accounts themselves take inspiration from the username 666 video, judging by the descriptions of some games, and one account being named after the creator of username 666. The Zodiac Chronicle, not Zodiac, is an obscure myth place with 18 visits as of writing. It was one of the first places ever investigated by the Robloxian Myth Hunters group. The game features a free model map with figures portraying some sort of story. It was created in October 2012 and hasn't been updated since. Abandoned Factory Spec 5 refers to an obscure demo created by Roblox horror game developer Rchive. As far as I know, they published it in June 2015, and a friend of mine at the time made a video about it. I messaged him asking for a link to the game, and I never actually got to play it until 9 years later, and by that time the game had already been deleted for years. Thankfully, before I made this video, Rchive provided a download for the RBXL. I haven't been able to find where the game was published, but it likely had less than 100 visits.